Welcome into Player Profiler Primetime. I'm Mike Lindberg here with Jeremiah Retzlaf, and tonight we are diving into the latest NFL news, trade rumors. Stay tuned as we bring you rapid fire analysis and debate on today's hottest topics. Let's get started with our top stories of the week. Well, Jeremiah, we have some big news coming off the press the last couple days. We have a big arrest and, from Jordan Addison, suspicions of DUI, allegedly found asleep behind the wheel. What you got on this situation, my man?
All right, so good to see you, Mike. This is twice in 2 off seasons that Jordan Addison has had off-field incidents, and both involved motor vehicles. Last year, it was speed, which was blamed on his dog, and we sort of bought it. And this year, there is intoxication involved. Just about a week ago, Addison's teammate, cornerback Kyrie Jackson, was killed at the hands of a drunk driver. The question that always comes up is, how come players don't use the free service the NFL provides? My guess into that is that the players think they'll be tracked anytime they use the service. And I'm stressing this is not a valid reason to avoid getting a ride. But I'm trying to think into the psychology why. Players may be doing drugs along with the alcohol, so maybe there's this fear of a drug test. Either way, it's no excuse. Nothing is ever really anonymous. We tend to think that the players who are guilty of DUI only get caught the one time they are under the influence. However, I see a pattern of this occurring more. We just aren't aware. Hence, the athletes simply don't always get caught. This is extremely scary. There are people who drive drunk every day. Take into account there's ego, not wanting to get help, also social anxiety and not wanting to lose agency over what you have going on. You want to leave when you can. If someone pulls up in a Lamborghini, they also like leaving in one versus a Honda Civic Uber ride coming their way. But that's an ego thing that somebody needs to get over with because it could save a life. Even more sad is that all the players have money to pay a personal chauffeur for the night if needed. It just takes some planning. It is also extremely selfish. Overall, this is outright stupidity, and I really hope Jordan Addison gets the help he needs before he hurts himself and or others. Now, we try and go to fantasy football. There's been a lot of crazy news out there. You come here for an escape, right? So what is the angle that you're looking for from a fantasy football standpoint? The less serious side, okay? The game of life is serious. Here we are on the fantasy football side. All right, we laid out recently how Jordan Addison could have a good early season window to put up some good weeks with TJ Hawkinson out, which would create a sell window in Dynasty. Now, a suspension possibly early in the season pushes that potential sell window down the road. Jordan Addison has not had a liquid market in Dynasty. If you tried to trade him this offseason, it has been difficult. You can draft Addison right now in round 6 on Underdog. Expect an ADP dip. Whether it will come with a suspension remains to be seen. The most bullish outlook strictly for a on-the-field scenario could be if the Vikings deem Jordan Addison's decision intolerable only a week after his teammate was killed from a drunk driver, and the Vikings outright cut Jordan Addison. The NFL is full of second chances. So Chris Carter got a wake-up call with the Eagles decades ago for personal issues and ended up in Minnesota reviving his career. Maybe we see something like that where Jordan Addison lands on another team where his fantasy outlook would be much better. So if you have Jordan Addison on your dynasty teams, you just need to hold for right now. There's some drama on social media. We'll see how it goes. But end of the day, beginning of the day, Jordan Addison needs to grow up. Now, on a lighter topic, a more palatable, more fun topic, because we hate seeing players get in trouble. We're always rooting for the best decisions to be made. Devonte Adams drama. Mike, will he be traded to the Jets? What does this mean for fantasy football? Is this smoke or fire? We saw the receiver documentary on Netflix, and Devonte Adams did not look too happy. You've got Jets players chirping. Give us the scoop, Mike.
Well, I got a good buddy of mine who's a diehard Raiders fan. He covers the Raiders for the Undroppables on Uncovered, and Big says that he doesn't think Devonte Adams is going to be on the move, but that's hearsay. His situation in Las Vegas is a big question mark for fantasy managers. Adams visibly frustrated last season with the quarterback issues and overall team performance. It faces uncertainty on a team that seems to be going through changes despite putting up decent numbers over 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns last season. Adams' dissatisfaction and ongoing instability with the Las Vegas Raiders could affect his fantasy output. Switching from Aaron Rodgers' precise passes in Green Bay to Jimmy Garoppolo's inconsistent throws in Las Vegas was a tough adjustment for Adams. His frustrations were clear, highlighted by the receivers documentary we talked about. He voiced concerns about his hits and the erratic passes he endured, while Adams initially clicked with Derek Carr, why he was, originally gone to the Raiders, the departure of Carr and the arrival of Garoppolo under former head coach Josh McDaniels added to Adams' challenges. Looking forward, the Raiders' decision not to draft a quarterback in 2024 suggests Adams might face another season without a stable QB. This raises doubts about his commitment to the team and his success and overall competitiveness with the Las Vegas Raiders possibly heading towards a rebuilding phase. Adams' role and fantasy impact could depend on whether they stabilize their quarterback situation or explore trade options. But on the flip side, there are speculations about Adams and potentially moving to other teams like the Jets you mentioned, where a star quarterback and, wide receiver like Garrett Wilson has shown interest in teaming up with him. There is excitement about it. I'm not so sure. I think this is another angle they're playing to get Adams, the support he needs. This could actually rejuvenate his career as a fantasy manager. You should be planning for this season ahead. Adam presents a risk, but potentially rewarding option. His talent and track record suggest he could produce very big numbers with the right quarterback and system. However, the uncertainty in Las Vegas and the possibility of the midseason trade or trading before the season adds some allure to Adams' fantasy value, and it could significantly change up or down. Someone to keep your eye on. I'm not sold on he's leaving the Raiders, but you never know. Are you folks enjoying the show? If you are, don't miss out on our exclusive content. Subscribe to Player Profiler YouTube channel at Player Profiler News. Follow us on Twitter at Player Profiler _NFL and visit our website at playerprofiler.com/news for all the latest breaking news and the impact on fantasy football. Stay ahead of the game with Player Profiler. Now, Jeremiah, we've got some more intrigue. It just seems like there's a lot of storylines happening back and forth nonstop with this Atlanta Falcon offense. They got a new quarterback, they got a new offensive coordinator, a new coach. What's going on here with Kyle Pitts? What do you think is going to happen in that situation with this Falcon offense?
You bring up a good point on the lead in there, Mike. The fact that everything you ever wanted to hear last year is what you're hearing this year, whether it's Drake London talking about Kirk Cousins, whether it's Kyle Pitts talking about his chemistry, just wanting targets, Bijan Robinson talking about the CMC role. It's really been unlimited bullish outlooks. And every couple weeks you hear the same thing. And the cool thing is you hear it echoed. What the player says is what the coaches are saying and vice versa. So the reporters are getting all the same thing. So I think that's part of where we're getting these repeated stories, because the cohesion between the player and the coaches, they're on the same page. So you're getting these same answers. That's an excellent sign that communication is on point and there's some unity in this team with this franchise for the Atlanta Falcons. Now, take Kyle Pitts. He is not known for his blocking prowess. It makes sense, though, that Zach Robinson will want to move one of the most elite athletic weapons around the formation. Kyle Pitts was tied in 12 in 2023 and struggled to break out with Arthur Smith calling the shots. In 2023, Kyle Pitts was number one in air yards, number one in air yard share, average target distance, better known as ADOT, deep targets, and unrealized air yards. Here's a problem. Kyle Pitts ranked 37th in catchable target rate. It was an uphill battle, both with play calling and poor quarterback play in 2023. The question that pops up is, isn't Kyle Pitts already deployed as a wide receiver and a tight end? In other words, why would this be newsworthy? So when Zach Robinson, OC, offensive coordinator, says he's learning, talking about Pitts, he's learning basically two different positions. The word that jumps out to me as a teacher is learning. This tells me that the Sean McVay inspired hire that is Zach Robinson, he has many more plans for Kyle Pitts that are more nuanced, in depth, and have higher expectations. If you ask Kyle Pitts, going back to that theme, you talk to the player, you talk to the coach, Kyle Pitts, he would probably give an answer such as, I'm being asked to do more in this offense. There's more wrinkles to what is being asked of me. So the expectations from Arthur Smith to Zach Robinson are reflective night and day. Again, Pitts' role may be the same, but I predict more intentional usage for Pitts. If I had my say, I would deploy Kyle Pitts versus linebackers, get those mismatches all day, and ask Kyle Pitts to do minimal blocking. But that is my fantasy football mind coming through. Overall, Kyle Pitts, he's 5th in our Player Profiler Dynasty tight end rankings and can be drafted on Underdog for best ball at the 5-6 turn as the tight end 6. A Kyle Pitts click a day will keep the doctor away. I sent that tweet out today and it felt great. It felt great when I clicked Kyle Pitts. As a tight end, the tight ends develop. They age like fine wine. Expect Kyle Pitts heading into his age 24 season to push towards tight end 1 overall supremacy. Now, Mike, we've been hearing a lot more bullish news. We're trying to make sense of this ambiguity in the Denver backfield. You've got Javonte Williams, Audric Estime. You have player archetypes, whether it's Jaleel McLaughlin and Blake Watson. And then you don't know what's going to happen with Samaj P. Ryan. Can you tell us, there's rumors about Audric Estime gaining some steam. Sean Payton's been talking up Audric Estime. What's your read on the Denver Broncos backfield?
My read, well, I think, there's a lot of situations happening in these backfields in the NFL, and this is one that I just love. I love these ambiguous backfields with a lot of, uncertainty in there, and all eyes are going to be on the Denver Broncos running back situation where Javonte Williams and Audric Estime are set to headline a captivating storyline. Williams, known for his physicality and football smarts, enters a critical phase with the Broncos as he nears the end of his contract and continues to bounce back from a career-threatening injury. Despite a solid comeback last season, Williams hasn't quite regained his pre-injury form, prompting the Broncos to draft Audric Estime in the 5th round as insurance. Estime arrives in Denver fresh from an impressive stint at Notre Dame, where he racked up over 1,300 yards rushing, 18 touchdowns. His college stats underscore his versatility, his readiness for the NFL, making him an appealing prospect for fantasy football managers seeking sleeper picks. Drafted specifically to bolster the Broncos' running back depth, Estime's arrivals set the stage for a compelling competition with Williams during training camp. Coach Sean Payton's endorsements of Estime's competing for significant early down snaps adds further intrigue to the Broncos' backfield mix. Despite Williams' experience, Estime's skills, both as a receiver and blocker, positions has a very versatile asset in Denver's offensive scheme. Fantasy gamers should closely monitor preseason updates as Estime's performance could propel him to a pivotal role alongside potentially ahead of Javonte Williams in this team's running back hierarchy. The brewing competition between these two underscores the Broncos' commitment to fostering a competitive environment. While Williams offers a reliability based on his track record, Estime presents an unpredictable element with considerable upside. I just think that Estime is poised here. I think his rapid ascent from a 5th round pick to a potential starter exemplifies Denver's strategy to cultivate a depth and foster internal competition. I just love this situation. I have him as a deep sleeper. In essence, while Williams remains entrenched as Denver's primary running back, Estime's emergence as a formidable challenger underscores the team's depth and potential strategic shifts. I love the situation. If he can secure a prominent role, Estime could be a sleeper that could win a lot of people leagues this year. Now, another guy that they were talking about here is a podfather, and he's here just to talk about, some upcoming ads here. Let's go.
This episode is brought to you by Player Profiler, the Dynasty Deluxe package. The rankings are the best in the industry. It includes strategy mode where you can say, hey, change the rankings to be win now. Oh, change the rankings to be productive struggle. There's also a draft planner to help strategize where you should take players because the draft planner also includes ADP. There's a trade finder where we look up on My Fantasy League and we see trades that are done, including a particular player. Then there's a trade analyzer where you can plug in draft picks, players, and we assign a lifetime value to draft picks out 5 years. The best thing about our trade analyzer, it can't be gamed with volume. And there's mock draft data to see right now what's the market for player X versus player Y, including in the fall when very few mock drafts are happening. And our Dynasty Guide, the Dynasty Dominator, would cost you $10 on Amazon, but you get it for free with Dynasty Deluxe, and you get our Rookie Guide for free, a $25 value. So you get all of that for $45. I mean, it's a great deal.
So we have had the Scott Fishbowl that's been taking over fantasy football. And we just want to review our teams, talk about where we think we got sniped, what we think we did well, what we would have hoped had happened for us. And for me, I'll just start breaking down my draft. And you can tell me, Mike, what you think, how I've done. This is my first Scott Fishbowl. I believe you've done a couple of them. I'm in the Sonny Corleone division. All right. It insists upon itself, the Godfather. So far, I have in this super flex setting from the 102, I went Josh Allen, Jaden Daniels. I'm so high on Jaden Daniels this year. And then I went hyper with tight end. And I was in the 102 chat, and there was talk about the easiest path to 24 points is the tight end position. So I just heard it, read it, and went with it. I went crazy with Kyle Pitts, George Kittle, Brock Bowers, tight end 7, 8, and 9. I had 3 tight ends before anybody else had their second tight end. And later on down, you can see I got Luke Musgrave. So I think I'm still way ahead in the tight end game. Hey, we talked about Kyle Pitts. I'm hoping there's a breakout there. George Kittle just seems like a perfect player set up for Scott Fishbowl. And then, of course, Brock Bowers with the aforementioned discussion of Davante Adams. If Davante Adams goes to the New York Jets, we are hyped about Brock Bowers. Not so happy about Garrett Wilson, but Brock Bowers here in this situation would be excellent. You, Mike, advised me, gave me some direction as a veteran to the Scott Fishbowl game and got me on the path towards the running backs. And at this point, it was Rachaad White, Ramondre Stevenson, and Kenneth Walker Jr. And I went with Rachaad White, ended up with Ramondre Stevenson. In round 8, I tried to break the board with some Rashid Shaheed. We've heard about what he can do as a returner. With Rashee Rice, I'm trying to get the dip there, and he could be my stud wide receiver who I have to implement into the receiver spot. If not, I don't feel pressure. We had spoken about there's less pressure to jam in many wide receivers. Then I got Raheem Mostert in the 10th round, who I feel like is a huge value. I leaned into the tight end. Maybe I'm going too far, but then again, why not do something wild in such a large tournament with Luke Musgrave? I went 12-13, Edwards and Chuba Hubbard. To me, they're going to be good advanced rate players in best ball, and I like to think with the way they can get carries that can benefit me here in the Scott Fishbowl. I didn't love Keon Coleman, but Curtis Samuel had gone on me, and I believe Khalil Shakir had gone on me. So I did go Keon Coleman. Dontavian Wicks, the turn with Xavier Legette. Maybe a mistake I made was I wanted to go for Marshawn Lloyd, but Marshawn Lloyd went right between me because I went Dontavian Wicks on the front end, and then I'm the wraparound pick of the turn. The person with the turn, shout out to Ray Mars, he went with Jonnu Smith, who I love, and then he went with Marshawn Lloyd. So I end up coming around with some Xavier Legette. What do you think of this team, Mike? How am I doing in my first Scott Fishbowl?
I think you're doing fantastic, actually. I think you got the concept right. I know that, coming from somebody that is connected with, like we've on the Dynasty Pulse through the Fantasy Football Plus network, we got, the Scott Fishbowl summer going on, and we've done a ton of mocks. So Biggs and I have been pretty versed in doing these mock drafts, and we know the scoring pretty well. So we know to attack the quarterback, the tight end, and the running back. We know that, wide receivers are faded, and you could potentially fill these flex spots with these punt return guys. And I love your Rashid Shaheed pick at the 802. I have not seen him fall that far. He was in the 4th round in my draft, so I think he got very good value there. I think you could have maybe waited around for Jaden Daniels. I think he probably could have been there at the 311 potentially for you. A little bit of a reach there, but I think that, the upside is there. You got 2 running quarterbacks, which are huge in this concept. You got those running backs, Raheem Mostert, and Gus Edwards, who can pound the ball and get a lot of touchdowns. I think that's a really good sound strategy. I'm very high on Ramondre Stevenson this year. And to get that stack with Keon Coleman, I think is a good roundabout. So yeah, I think you've done very, very well. My advice to you heading into the later rounds here would be to continue to stack these punt return guys that could potentially get some value, and then get those later quarterbacks if there's any left around. You don't want to be scounging the waiver wire for quarterbacks and getting your money there. If you can have a couple already there, you don't have to worry that position, and then you can spend some money on the punt return position, because I think especially early on, these guys don't really know. We don't really know how these guys are going to perform in this setting. So there's going to be a lot of guys you're going to be popping off the waiver wire, especially weeks 1 or 2, and you don't want to be quarterback needy at that stage. So I'd be looking for that. That would be my advice. If you want to pull up my team, I can kind of give you an idea where I'm at and where we're headed. We're a little bit slower than where you're at in your draft, but I can kind of run down my team here.
And I do just want to shout out to Uncle Ted. Uncle Ted told us something about wanting to draft more rookie running backs. It's funny that you mentioned that, because my Rachaad White, Stevenson, Mostert, Edwards, Chuba, I just kind of feel okay about that room. I feel safe. It feels like a safe running back room, but not some wild upside. And in Underdog Best Ball, I'm all about the Bensons, the Corums, the Lloyds, Jaleel McLaughlin's. And I'm somebody who drafted a ton of Devon Achane last year, and am still going towards that. And it's so funny because I'm sitting here, one inner critique on this team was talking about my running backs to myself, and I'm like, yeah, it just kind of feels okay. And it's kind of funny how sometimes those end up sometimes being your best teams. But that's just a little anecdote there. Appreciate the comment from Uncle Ted. We appreciate all of your comments, everyone in the audience there. Let me pull up your team.
Over 110 live viewers right now, so we appreciate you all for tuning in to us here. The show is growing, so like, subscribe, continue to hit the subscribe button, but also get in on the comments. If you got any questions that pop up, we'd love to hear them. We'd love to answer. That's what we're here to do. So we have no problem stopping the show midstream to talk ball with our viewers. So please come in. And now I'm going to switch my hat up here, folks, because I'm going to represent a team that maybe you're going to see a theme throughout my lineup here at the Scott Fishbowl. Now, it's getting changed here to the Kansas City Chiefs, and I can see some Chiefs in the crowd here. I got a really good slide on my first pick, and that's Patrick Mahomes. His ADP in the Scott Fishbowl is 105. And I got him at the 111. So here we go. Harry Snowman's in the chat. Let's go. We love having you on here. And then I decided to stack him with Travis Kelce. If you looked at last year's Scott Fishbowl, Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes were within the top. Both were in the top 5 ADP in Scott Fishbowl scoring. I'm expecting a big year, and then I like the tight end position, so I went Trey McBride. And like I advised to Jeremiah, after that, I was like, let's pound some running backs. So I wasn't necessarily over the moon with the running backs that I have in this spot. Like I would have preferred to have Rachaad White instead of Josh Jacobs, but he went right before. I would have preferred to have Ramondre Stevenson instead of Alvin Kamara, but he went the pick before. So some of that pivot needed to happen, but I still got some guys that I know are going to have huge upside. T. Higgins as my first wide receiver slid to the 8th round. He was going in the ADPs 2 or 3 rounds ahead. And then Deontay Johnson, I made a bit of a reach, but I know he's going to be a target hog. I think Dave Canales is setting up the stage for Bryce Young to have a really productive season. You know what he did with Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield. And I couldn't resist the triple stack when you think about this format to get Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Rashee Rice as a stack. You can't go wrong here. And then Marvin Mims last year was 8 points per game in this format without even seeing the field. So I think that is a huge flyer. I love the upside. If you've listened to the show, if you've been on the Dynasty Pulse, we had tight end guru Andrew Cooper, and he's very high on Hunter Henry this year. So that was a no-brainer. And now I am ready to solidify my. I started the last quarterback run, so now I got 3 comparable quarterbacks, and now I'm ready to hit these punt return guys and these rookie running backs like Uncle Ted had mentioned. I'm just going to pound them down now because it's where it's at. So that's how my rundown is. What do you think of my team there, Jeremiah? Tell the 116 viewers live what you think of Greinberg's team.
So I really enjoy.
You're on mute.
Can you hear me?
Your audio is a little bit whack, so I'm going to continue going until we could get that figured out. But honestly, this Scott Fishbowl has been an awesome time. If you've been, had the opportunity to be part of the Scott Fishbowl, it's a great opportunity for you to, promote to charity. It's an awesome, it's an awesome charity, and it's a great opportunity to do things. Jeremiah, are you back here?
Am I back?
No, I can't hear you, sir. So I'm going to continue on. I'm going to move on, and we're going to get into the next portion of this show. And I'm going to talk to you guys about the chef's table. What do we got on cooking this week? All right, folks. The chef's table this week is we're going to talk about the Dallas Cowboys and their offense and how it's going to break down in 2024. Over the past 3 seasons, the Dallas Cowboys have posted an impressive 12-5 record, but have managed just 1 playoff win. Despite this, their offense has been a fantasy football powerhouse led by Dak Prescott's consistent performances led them to their perennial contenders. As they head into 2024, uncertainty looms amidst changes in their coaching staff and player rosters. Head coach Mike McCarthy has maintained a solid 42-25 record, but over these 4 seasons, they haven't been very, advantageous come playoff time. Older rivals include Ezekiel Elliott. Now they have Royce Freeman as a backup running back, while departures feature Tony Pollard and Titans Michael Gallup to the Raiders. An impact draft pick was made with Ryan Flournoy. I just think this Dallas Cowboys situation is in looming. We have a couple contract situations in flux. We're going to talk about Dak Prescott. He remains the beacon of optimism despite minor foot sprain and that briefly raised concerns, coming off an outstanding 2023 campaign where he led the NFL in touchdown passes and was a strong MVP contender. Prescott heads into this new season with confidence and momentum. Despite a footage issue, I just think that's a precautionary measure. I'm not worried about Dak Prescott headed back. I don't think there's going to be any major setbacks in his preparation. He showcased in 2023 elite skills by throwing 4,500 yards, 36 touchdowns, 70% completion rating. His command of that offense was evident. He led the Cowboys to a 5-1 record within their division. He led it with 300 passing yards per game. He threw 17 touchdowns and just 2 interceptions in those games. Despite criticisms, he has not performed well in the playoffs. Looking ahead, though, his contract situation, it adds intrigue, but fantasy managers can be confident in Dak Prescott for at least one more season. We don't know where he's going to be in 2025, but I can tell you that 2024, him with CeeDee Lamb, I think are going to be a formidable, combination like they were late in 2023. I think as fantasy drafts approach, Prescott stands out as the foundational choice, capable of providing elite passing stats. And I just think this dynamic offense is going to continue to be dynamic in a division that's up for grabs. Prescott does not offer much rushing upside, but he has the throwing stats, and I think he can get him at a value, especially with what's going on. He's just a guy that I'm just targeting very much a lot in the later rounds in these drafts. And now moving on to the wide receiver room. Jeremiah, you back with us? Can I get you back in here to say hello?
Hey, can you hear me now?
All right, we're good to go here now.
Beautiful.
I'm gonna just continue on. Heading into the fantasy football season, the Cowboys wide receiver situation revolves around the two key players in the wide receiver room: CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks. Lamb, a 25-year-old star Pro Bowl receiver. We know he had the wide receiver one finish last year, despite skipping mandatory team activities in pursuit of a new deal. Lamb's performance in 2023, where he racked up 135 catches, almost 1,800 yards and 12 touchdowns, solidifies his role as the primary option. In fantasy football circles, Lamb's dominance was evident, and he's still finished as the top wide receiver with 335 points. His ability to attract targets, leading the league with 179 receptions. We know this because, we had Jeremiah talk him up last week. We're going to get him, he's going to have his say about CeeDee Lamb in a couple minutes. We talked about the wide receiver one. He was all over CeeDee Lamb last week, and it's hard not to be on that train. But the spotlight now shifts to the wide receiver two. Who's it going to be? Who steps into that role? Michael Gallup's departure. Brandon Cooks is 31 years old. I think that number two wide receiver is going to be the tight end, Jake Ferguson, and I think he's going to command a lot of targets in that offense. I think that, after a slower start in 2023, Ferguson showcased his potential later in the half of the season, finishing as the tight end 7 from, week 8 on. I love his involvement. It's going to increase. He's going to be a very highly touted target for Dak Prescott. Ferguson is a valuable asset, and he's established his role, and his upside in this potent offense is evident. As fantasy gamers prepare for 2024, keeping an eye on Ferguson's progress in training camp and preseason games will be crucial. His ability to strengthen his rapport with Prescott and capitalize on red zone opportunities will directly impact his fantasy output. Ferguson remains a promising option, and I'm all over him. I see him finishing as a top 10 tight end in 2024 for sure. I think that's a great opportunity for him to come out and hit the ground swinging. Now, now let's get into the running back room, and I'm going to quickly go through here because it's a running back room that is still full of influx. Zeke's coming back, and we know what he's done in the Dallas Cowboys offense in the past. His value hinges on his workload and knack for finding the end zone. The Cowboys have consistently relied on crucial goal line scenarios over the last few years, and I just think it's going to happen again. Although he does have a competent backup, Rico Dowdle is expected to serve as that change of pace option in that dynamic offense. While Dowdle isn't exactly to challenge, Zeke for that primary role right off the hop, I do think he, presents late round draft pick intrigue as a potential because he can contribute. His role's going to grow, and Zeke's wheels are about to fall off. So I think that Dowdle's got that opportunity, and I think he can really seize that role if the opportunity gets there and Zeke slows down. I think that Zeke is going to get those red zone looks, but that's not saying that Dowdle can't get some of those in between the 20s. Now, Zeke's durability and workload management will be crucial for many factors, but I think his value is bolstered by his volume, his touches, the goal line situation within that Dallas Cowboys offense. And this is a team that is going to be under the microscope pretty heavily here in 2024. There's a lot of influx in that team and a lot going on there. Jeremiah, hopefully you're back here and we can get you started up and talking about your combat zone. So I'm going to play the video and get you going.
It's go time. It's go time. It's go time. We going up. We go.
Wait, Mike, you want my coach's corner?
Your coach's corner. Sorry.
Oh,
yes,
sorry.
you there.
Hey, and I just want to shout out before it got cut off there, Mike, I really do like your Scott Fishbowl team where you went Travis Kelce at the 202 and then you were able to come back with Trey McBride. The fact that somebody didn't select Trey McBride between all that is just wild to me. And I love that you got Daniel Jones as your third quarterback. So you won't have to hunt nearly as much as I will for my third quarterback. So very good job there. And then you waited until round 8 to get your first receiver in T. Higgins. And then you strung along like beautiful Christmas lights, T. Higgins, Deontay Johnson, Rashee Rice, Marvin Mims. So you and I are on the same page there with Rashee Rice. Now going over to, we're keeping this thing in Texas, right? Let's go over the Houston Texans. Nico Collins goes in round 2 on underdog. He's creeping into that 1-2 turn. Drafters are trying to be different, but also this is a player takes steam that is happening. People like Nico Collins to separate. 17.4 fantasy points per game in 2023. It was 7th at the wide receiver position. Nico Collins was number 3 in yards per target with 11.9. Number 1 in fantasy points per target versus man coverage with 2.56. So line Nico Collins up against whoever, he's going to get those yards. We love Nico Collins as a hidden gem out of Michigan. His career arc has not been linear, but man, it feels pretty linear with CJ Stroud as his quarterback. So it's a pretty smooth road now for Nico Collins. And then Stephon Diggs, round 3 on underdog in 2023. It's kind of like this Dr. Jekyll and Hyde. From weeks 1 through 9, 6 out of those 9 weeks, which is very nice, Stephon Diggs was a top 12 wide receiver, with one of those weeks being the wide receiver 13 against the Commanders in week 3. So we are trying to look for all the bullish outlooks. That first half of the season, it was very bullish for Stephon Diggs. Now this is where it turns down. Week 10 and 11, Diggs was the exact wide receiver 53 in back-to-back weeks. Week 12 versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Remember, that was a back-and-forth game where Diggs, he was wide receiver 15. That appears in the timeline of last season to be a dead cat bounce. And then week 14 to 17, Diggs ranged from wide receiver 45 all the way to wide receiver 55. So we have this Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde situation where the first half of the season, Stephon Diggs was his old self. And the back half is a player that we haven't seen. So the positive is that Stephon Diggs had 100% route participation last year, was 6th in targets with 160, and receptions as well with 107, and 8th in unrealized air yards with 869. So we will find out with the Texans and CJ Stroud if Stephon Diggs experienced an age cliff or was it a chemistry cliff with Josh Allen in 2023. Now let's go over to Tank Dell, round 3 on underdog, 5'8", 165 pounds, and we no longer think of his size as any real factor. Tank Dell can ball. In 10 fully healthy games played, Tank Dell had 4 top 12 weeks, with 3 of those games consecutively from weeks 9 to 11 against the Buccaneers, Bengals, and the Cardinals. Week 9, Tank Dell was wide receiver 1 overall. Prior to getting hurt, Tank Dell was hitting his stride as a rookie. Dell has presented the best value in these best ball drafts and is an easy buy in Dynasty for anyone who sees a jumbled mess. Okay, which of the 3 receivers do you click, right? My pitch and my question to Dynasty gamers would be, who is tougher to buy right now in Dynasty? And this isn't difficult. Rome Odunze on the Bears or Tank Dell on the Texans. With the answer being Rome Odunze, pivot and seek to buy Tank Dell for a cheaper price. look at the offenses and they're equally bullish, I would actually pivot towards the Texans over the Bears. Joe Mixon goes at the 5-6 turn on underdog. Joe Mixon, he is the table is set kind of player. You can draft as your first running back. The point being, you can chase building your wide receiver room, your elite tight end, and elite quarterback in those one quarterback contests and end up with Joe Mixon as your RB1. Talk about pressure being off the running back position in Houston. No one will be able to keep up with the wide receivers while having to honor CJ Stroud's lethal arm. So this is excellent for that backfield. With the Bengals in 2023, Joe Mixon had 52 receptions, which was 9th at the position, 5th in carries with 257. So he can take a larger workload. As far as archetype of running back, Joe Mixon is someone who can carry the 60% lead back role. We talk about, is this guy a 60%er? Is he a 40%er? Joe Mixon is one of those 60%ers who can take on that lead back role. His 2023 snap share was a nice 69.8, ranking 69.8%, ranking Joe Mixon 8th at his position. So Joe Mixon was RB6 in 2023, and he's going on underdog as RB14. So take advantage of that difference. Dwayne McFarland talks about past production being the best indicator of future production in fantasy football. Joe Mixon is a player where he has the past production, but also we can project forward his team situation and be bullish. So grab the Mixon discount in best ball drafts. Now let's take CJ Stroud, round 6. He's a fun quarterback to cap on Texan stacks in best ball. You can get 1 to 3 of those premier wide receivers and end up with CJ Stroud. The beauty is you are competing mostly with Texans and Ravens drafters. So CJ Stroud falls in drafts and is a rather easy QB to get considering how elite this Texans offense is. Stroud's ADP is inflated, though, due to the bullish nature of the Texans offense. CJ Stroud could easily be drafted this time next year in the clump that is ready for it. Joe Burrow, Dak Prescott, Jordan Love in round 8, and it wouldn't be a slight at all to Stroud's game. Jaden Daniels in round 9, I would throw in there as well. Draft Stroud in best ball with your Ravens and Texans players, but the price points for quarterbacks on the Bengals, Cowboys, Packers, and Commanders is much more palatable. Notice CJ Stroud and Kyler Murray's ADP are converging. There's an 8-pick difference now, or sorry, a 12-pick difference now between Stroud and Murray. About 2 months ago, it was near 30 picks difference. Now, pivot over to Dalton Schultz in round 11. Tight end 10 last year in 2023. Don't go crazy about that. Remember, there's a cliff after the elite tight ends. What happens in Texas stays in Texas, and that is Dalton Schultz. He didn't leave and go too far. Dalton Schultz was 7th in air yards with 669, 7th in total touchdowns with 5, and 12th in tight end receptions with 59. Schultz will not threaten to be a top 5 tight end. However, he can easily return back-end tight end 1 value again, as his cost reflects. He's going off Dalton Schultz, the tight end 13 off the board and underdog. Now Dameon Pierce, round 17. He's a stay away. Recall drafters loving Dameon Pierce in his rookie season. As a 4th round pick, the Texans got what they paid for. We talk ourselves so quickly into Kamani Vidals, all the way to the Dylan Lobbies, but forget how many day 3 running backs just become depth pieces and nothing more. The cliff came quick for Dameon Pierce. The Texans got their replacement fast in Joe Mixon. As far as draft capital mattering or not, just know that day 3 players will get opportunities and looks, but the window is tight and teams will move on quickly. When we look for contingent value, I'd be cautious with the Houston Texans of thinking Dameon Pierce is the next man up. The Texans would be ripe to bring in another running back via trade or free agency should Joe Mixon go down for a lengthy absence. Remember, the Houston Texans have their sights set on a Super Bowl, and that's not hyperbole. Imagine saying that just a year ago. Now I'll tie it up with Noah Brown, John Mechie, round 18. Both are fun, low-pressure dart throws in round 18. If I can tell myself a story about Paris Campbell and Philly for a differentiated stack in round 18, or Malik Washington in Miami, then I can certainly be agreeable to a few late-round clicks on Brown and Mechie. Now, Jawar Jordan. in round 18. Keep an eye in training camp if Jordan is making a splash. In the case of Jawar Jordan, refer to Dameon Pierce's outlook. A contingent piece will likely come from outside the current team as is. So then I just want to say to everybody as I wrap that up, are you enjoying the show? Don't miss out on more exclusive content. Subscribe to Player Profiler YouTube channel and at Player Profiler News. Follow us on Twitter at Player Profiler NFL_NFL and visit our website, playerprofiler.com/news for all the latest breaking news and its impact on fantasy football. Stay ahead of the game with Player Profiler. Mike and I, we contribute a couple times a week on Player Profiler News. We've got an excellent team there led by Bradley Stalder. So you're just staying there with the news and you're getting actionable content. So if you like what we're talking about here, you can get that in writing and video form on our Player Profiler News page. So, Mike, we did your chef's table. We did my coach's corner. Are you ready for the combat zone?
I'm ready for the combat zone. Let's do it.
It's go time. It's go time. It's go time. We going up. We go.
All right. I just wanted to shout out our viewer, Harry Snowman. Thanks for commenting today. And then also, it was my earphones dropped out on you, Jeremiah. It wasn't your bad. So, yeah, we are good to go now. And let's bring up last week's combat zone because we were debating over who would be the wide receiver 1 in 2024. And the verdict is out. We had our Twitter poll up and we ended up getting a pretty much an unanimous decision here. We had CeeDee Lamb with the win. I think it was almost 42% as the winner there. I think you're going to pull it up right away.
Yep.
And then Amon-Ra St. Brown did finish second, which I was actually a bit surprised about because, Tyreek Hill coming off a monster year last year where he was, flirting with the 2,000-yard mark. Jefferson coming off a monster year, the year before. There's a lot of variables there in CeeDee Lamb, and I was just surprised that Amon-Ra finished where he did. It says a lot about his talent and where he's headed in 2024. So, yeah, good on you there. Now, this week, let's get into this week, and we have another big debate that we're going to talk about. We talked 2 weeks ago about the tight end 1, who was going to finish as the tight end 1, and it was Sam Laporta that finished off that one as the leader, and both of us were wrong. You picked Trey McBride. I have Travis Kelce up there, and last week was CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra. This week, we're going quarterback 1. And who do you think is going to finish as the quarterback 1? Let me have it.
You want it?
I want it. Let's go.
All right. You lead off. You lead off, Mike.
Okay, I'm going to go. I'm going to go because, you know what? It's going to be hard to dethrone the champ. And Josh Allen's fantasy football history speaks volumes about his reliability and top-tier performance over the years. Since 2019, Allen has consistently ranked among the top quarterbacks, finishing as QB7, QB1, QB1, QB2, QB1 in fantasy scoring. This track record underscores his ability to deliver standout performances season after season. With an average of 4,400 passing yards, 34 touchdowns in his last 4 seasons, Allen has firmly established himself as a premier quarterback in real life and in fantasy football. His dual threat skills are a key asset, highlighted by his impressive average of 596 yards on the ground and 9 rushing touchdowns per season over the last 5 years. While replicating his 15 rushing touchdowns from last season may be a stretch, Allen's consistent ability to contribute on the ground adds significant value to his fantasy profile. Despite the offseason trade of Stephon Diggs and his depart to the Texans, which raises questions about the Bills' receiving core, Allen's adaptability and skill set make him a compelling case for him to maintain that status as the top quarterback in fantasy football. Despite changes in personnel, Allen's arm strength, mobility, and leadership qualities make him the focal point of the Buffalo Bills offense. While chemistry with his new targets will be a storyline to watch early in the season, Allen's rushing ability and playmaking skills mitigate concerns about potential adjustments. Reflecting on Allen's journey and highly touted prospects out of Kentucky to a consistent fantasy performer underscores his development and resilience after facing doubts following a challenging period between 2020 and 2022. Allen silenced critics with the breakout season last year and finished as the QB1. I'm looking ahead at 2024. His fantasy prospects remain promising still. Allen's combination of passing prowess, rushing ability, and leadership qualities positions him as the front runner to finish as the quarterback one in fantasy football. Josh Allen's stellar track record as a top fantasy quarterback, finishing no worse than quarterback 2 since 2020, averaging 4,300 yards. His track record as a premier quarterback and consistent top-tier performance solidifies his reign as 2024 fantasy football king, despite off-season changes. Now, what do you got? Who's coming in? Who's taking the throne away from Josh Allen this year?
Well, hey, it's probably, with my experience with Buffalo, it's probably snowing there right now. It snows there a lot. I went to SUNY Cortland, so those are some jokes between some of my best friends who are from Buffalo. Let me tell you, Jalen Hurts will be the quarterback one in 2024. All right, he was QB2 in fantasy football in 2023, so it's a razor-thin margin here. Jalen Hurts will take the throne. Offensive coordinator Kellen Moore will be more creative in the passing game and have a more up-tempo offense. Jalen Hurts was banged up last year. Whether it was lower body, I believe he had some shoulder issue. Now, there's a segment of Cowboys fans who will rag on Jalen Hurts and talk about on X about, oh, he must have a hurt shoulder. But I really think Jalen Hurts had a hurt shoulder last year. So a critique of the offense I've talked on here before a few weeks ago is that Jalen Hurts decided too late between the 20s to become a rusher. Hurts needs to utilize part of his early reads to incorporate taking off and rushing, which will create defenders being off balance. Kellen Moore will run a more up-tempo offense. I see more plays and quicker pace for this offense, which will raise Hurts' passing numbers and, of course, will raise the amount of plays that they have. Remember early in the season when DeAndre Swift did so well, they would bleed clock and then hand the rock off to DeAndre Swift. This offense will run through Jalen Hurts in 2024. Jalen Hurts, here are his passing numbers. He was number 2 in fantasy points per game with 21.9, number 7 in deep ball attempts. So it's not all short passing. People rag on the deep ball for Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts was number 3 in air yards per attempt, number 2 in best ball points added with 88, number 4 in fantasy points added per dropback, number 4 in air yards with 4,669, number 1 in expected fantasy points per game with 20.9, number 9 in red zone completion percentage. With 59.3%. I'm speechless. For rushing, he was number 1 in carries with 157, number 3 in carries per game with 9.2, number 1 in red zone carries, number 1 in red zone carries per game, number 1 in rushing touchdowns with 15. Jalen Hurts will be the number 1 quarterback in 2024.
In your speech, just take a sip of that. Yeah, we've got some action here in our chat, and we've got some people talking about, Uncle Ted saying AR5 is going to be a superstar. I don't have any doubts about that. I think he's got an outside shot at finishing as the quarterback one. There's no doubt. I think Lamar Jackson is in that conversation as well, and obviously Patrick Mahomes, who I think somebody else in the chat. Oh yeah, look at that. Rubio with Mahomes has a bounce back year and reclaims the throne. So there's a lot of, names in the hat here. And we're going to put up a Twitter poll. So on Player Profiler News on our Twitter feed. So in about an hour's time, check out for that. Have your vote if you think that both Jeremiah and myself are wrong on that one. Jeremiah, you got your wits end about you again here? You're good to go? Yeah? All right.
I think so. So there's a guy who his wife calls him. He's ironing his clothes, and he answers with the iron and burns his ear. And then he goes to the doctor, tells the doctor about it. And the doctor says, well, what happened to your other ear? And the guy says, well, my wife called me back. So he had 2 burned ears. Thank you for sticking with us to the end. I apologize for my voice going out. We will see you next week.
Thanks
I
for
want to
joining.
thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.